The suite was everything a wedding night should be. White roses, 200 of them, arranged by someone who understood that beauty was architecture, lined the windowsills and filled the room with a sweetness that Zara Mensah would spend years trying to forget. The lighting was warm and low, the kind that makes every surface look like it belongs in a painting. The bed was turned down with a precision that suggested the hotel had prepared for this night with as much care as she had. A bottle of champagne sweated quietly in its silver bucket. 2 glasses, both empty. Zara stood at the edge of the king-sized bed in the lingerie she had chosen 6 weeks ago on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in a boutique in Gangnam. Ivory silk, the color of her wedding dress, chosen with the specific intention of a woman who had waited, who had kept herself, or who had decided that the man she married was worth arriving for in full. The fabric fell soft against her skin, and she had looked at herself in the mirror before he left and felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely ready for something. That was 4 hours ago. Her phone showed 17 missed calls to Kai, not unanswered. Missed. There was a difference, and she understood it, and it made the room feel smaller. The clock on the bedside table read 11:47 p.m. in red numerals that seemed, in the stillness of the suite, unnecessarily loud. She had been sitting at the edge of this bed for 2 hours. Before that, she had paced. Before that, she had repoured the same glass of champagne 3 times and not drunk any of it. She was not a woman who cried easily. She was not a woman who panicked. She was a woman who had built a company from the ground up in a country that was not her own, who had learned to read a room, any room, within 30 seconds of entering it, who had never in her professional life been caught unprepared. But this room she could not read, because the room said, celebration, and the clock said, he is not coming. And neither of those 2 things could be true at the same time. And yet, here she was, in ivory silk, at 11:47 p.m. on her wedding night, entirely alone. She poured the champagne down the bathroom sink. She washed her face. She put on the hotel robe. She sat in the chair by the window and looked at Busan, all that light and port energy, and the dark sea beyond it. And she waited. Before we go any further, I need to stop and ask you something real. If you had kept yourself, truly kept yourself, and your wedding night arrived, and your new husband was nowhere to be found, no explanation, just silence and an empty room, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments right now because I need to know. And stay close, because what happens next in this story is something none of us were ready for. There was a knock at the door at 11:52 p.m. She crossed the room in the hotel robe, and her heart did the thing it does when you have been waiting so long for something that relief and dread arrive at the same moment. She thought it was him. She opened the door. It was not him. We do not stay in that corridor. We stay with the city outside the window. We stay with the white roses and the 2 empty champagne glasses and the silence of a room that was supposed to hold something beautiful. Then we cut, and when we return, it is morning. Gray Busan light through floor-to-ceiling glass, the champagne bucket, water now. The roses, still white, still perfect, indifferent to everything that had happened in this room. Zara sat in the chair by the window in the hotel robe, her feet bare on the carpet, her face carrying a stillness so complete it looked like a decision that had already been made. She had not slept. She was not going to sleep. She had passed through the part of the night where sleep was a possibility and come out on the other side of it into something quieter and more permanent. Kai Sung came through the suite door at 5:14 a.m. He was still in his wedding suit. His tie was loosened. He had the specific look of a man who had been running his empire through the night and had not entirely caught up to the fact that his empire was not the only thing that needed him. He said her name. Zara. She did not look at him. She said, with a quiet that was more complete than any anger she had ever expressed, "I need you to sleep in the other room." He stood in the doorway of their wedding suite and looked at his wife in the gray morning light and didn't understand. He opened his mouth. She said nothing else. She had already said everything she was going to say, and the room knew it even if he didn't. He slept in the other room. Cut to 20 months earlier. Back to before. Back to when everything was still possible and the damage had not yet been done. Busan received Zara Mensah the way port cities receive people who are built from more than one world, with a kind of knowing that does not announce itself. She had been in South Korea for 3 years by the time the story begins properly, long enough to have learned the city's rhythms without losing her own. Onyx, her interior architecture and space design firm, had earned a reputation in Busan that preceded her into rooms she hadn't entered yet. She designed for the ultra-wealthy, private estates, luxury hotels, embassies, the kinds of spaces where the client had never once had to compromise and expected the person they hired to understand that without being told. She was 36. Ghanaian British. She wore her hair natural and her clothes architectural, and she walked through every space she entered as though she was already mentally understanding its bones. She was overseeing the final installation of an Onyx commission at the Grand Hyatt Busan on a Wednesday morning, a lobby redesign that had taken 14 months and had turned out, in her professional assessment, exactly as it should. When Kai Sung walked through the building, he was not supposed to stop. He stopped. Not dramatically. He simply paused in his movement through the lobby, a man who moved through rooms the way rooms moved around other people, and he looked at the ceiling installation she had just finished supervising, and then he looked at her. She was standing 12 feet away with a floor plan in one hand and a leveling tool in the other, in conversation with her site manager, and she registered him the way she registered structural anomalies, immediately, involuntarily, before she had decided to. He said, "Did you design this?" She said yes. He looked up again. He said, "The material choice for the suspended panels. Why that specific weight?" Nobody had asked her that question. Not the client, not the press, not the 3 architects who had toured the space. She looked at him properly for the first time and said, "Because the lobby faces west. In the afternoon, the light would have made a lighter material disappear. This weight catches it." He nodded once. He left. He came back the next day. She was still on site. "You came back," she said, not looking up from the schematics she was reviewing. "I had questions," he said. "Deep about the lobby?" "About the designer." She looked up then. He was standing with his hands in his pockets with the ease of a man who had learned a long time ago that he did not need to perform anything. She said, "I don't typically discuss my personal life on site." He said, "I'm not asking about your personal life. I'm asking about your process." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Come back at 7. The crew will be gone." He came back at 7. They talked until 10. She showed him the original concept sketches, the 3 iterations, the spatial decisions that had led to the final installation. He asked questions that were the questions of someone who genuinely saw, not performing interest, not networking, actually looking. He asked about the relationship between the suspended ceiling panels and the load-bearing columns, and she explained, and he followed, and asked a follow-up that showed he had actually processed the first answer. He asked about the client brief and what she had changed from it, and why. And she told him about the 3 things she had refused, and why she had refused them, and what she had offered in exchange. And he said, "You negotiate from your vision outward. Most designers negotiate from the client's budget inward." She said, "Most designers are not me." He looked at her with the specific expression of a man who has just had something confirmed that he had suspected. She found herself answering in a register she rarely used with clients. Honest rather than professional. It's specific rather than managed, and only registered this at 9:40 when she looked at the time and understood they had been in the lobby for nearly 3 hours. When he left, he said, "I'd like to have dinner with you." She said, "I know." He almost smiled. She didn't. The dinner was 3 days later, then another 2 weeks after that. Then a conversation in her studio that lasted until 2 in the morning and covered everything from the spatial philosophy of traditional Ghanaian compound architecture to why Busan was a better city than Seoul for anyone who found Seoul's self-consciousness exhausting. Sena Asante, Zara's best friend and Onyx's creative director, Ghanaian British, constitutionally incapable of pretending she didn't notice things, had watched all of this from a careful distance, and then, on a Friday morning over coffee in the studio, said simply, "When are you going to admit this is something?" Zara said, "I'm being careful." Sena said, "You're always careful. That's not the same as an answer." Zara looked at her coffee. She said, "He's the kind of man that could rearrange things." Sena said, "Maybe some things need rearranging." The engagement happened on a Tuesday evening in Kai's apartment, which Zara had been to enough times that she had quietly, involuntarily, begun redesigning it in her head, the way she redesigned every space she inhabited long enough. He told her over dinner that he wanted to marry her. She asked him why Tuesday. He said because he had decided on Sunday, and he needed 2 days to be certain he was asking for himself and not for what he wanted. She sat with that for a moment. She said yes. Before the announcement, he sat across from her at the same dinner table and told her the shape of his world. Not everything, but enough. The Sung Syndicate. What it controlled. What his role in it was and had been since he was 26 years old. He did not soften it or frame it strategically. He told her the way a man tells a woman something true when he has decided she deserves the truth more than she deserves comfort. She was quiet for a long time when he finished. The apartment was very still. Then she asked her one question. "Will it ever touch me?" He looked at her steadily, with the full weight of a man who understood what was being asked and what the answer would cost him if he got it wrong. He said, "No." That was the promise. That was the load-bearing wall of everything that came after. That single word, unspoken in a quiet apartment in Busan on a Tuesday night, was the foundation she built her marriage on. The wedding was exactly what she designed it to be. 50 people. A venue overlooking the water, an ivory and gold dress she had drafted herself at midnight 3 weeks before, structured at the shoulders, fluid at the hem, architectural in the way that all her best work was architectural, beautiful in the way that things are beautiful when they have been made with complete intention. Kai stood at the front of the room and watched her walk toward him with an expression that was not performed and not managed, just his actual face, with something in it that he had clearly decided not to hide. The ceremony was honest, and the reception was warm, and Sena gave a speech that made Zara laugh, the specific laugh that only Sena could produce. And for several hours, the world was exactly what it should be. Then Kai's phone buzzed. Then again. She watched his face from across the table. She knew his face the way you know the face of the person you have chosen, the specific vocabulary of it. And she saw him reading the message, and she saw something shift. He excused himself. He was gone for 4 minutes. He came back, and he crouched beside her chair and spoke quietly, close to her ear. "There's a situation with the Beck faction. They're making a move on the port operations tonight. It can't wait, Zara. It cannot wait. I need 2 hours. Go up to the suite. The building is secure. You are completely safe. I will be back before midnight. I promise." He pulled back and looked at her, and his eyes were serious and present, and she could see that he meant all of it. "I love you," he said. 2 hours. She nodded. He kissed her forehead. He left with 3 of his men. She went up to the suite. She changed into the ivory silk. She waited. He did not come back in 2 hours. The morning after the wedding night, Kai moved his things into the second bedroom without being asked twice. He did not understand what he was moving away from. He understood that she had asked, and that whatever she needed, he owed her. He told himself it was the adjustment of a new marriage. He told himself she was a private person who needed time. He told himself these things with the specific persistence of a man who is trying very hard not to know what he already knows. Zara returned to Onyx on Monday. This was 4 days after the wedding. Sina looked at her across the studio and said nothing, because she was Sina, and she understood the difference between a woman who needs space and a woman who needs witness. And for now, Zara needed space. Zara threw herself into the Tokyo Commission, a private collector's penthouse in Minato, 3 weeks on site. And then, without coming up for air, she took Dubai, a royal family's private guest estate, and then Cape Town, a conservation lodge in the winelands that required her to be physically present through the entire build. She was everywhere except home. When she was home, she was polite, engaged, warm in the surface sense that is indistinguishable from warmth unless you have known someone long enough to know the difference. Kai knew the difference. He gave her the space she seemed to need. He told himself he was being respectful, and he was also, in a part of himself he was not yet ready to examine, afraid of what he would find if he stopped waiting and started looking. Their home was a glass and concrete architectural statement on the Busan hillside. Zara had moved into it 6 months before the wedding and had quietly, professionally redesigned 3 of its rooms without telling him. And he had come home one day to find the study transformed and had said nothing because he loved what she had done and loved more that she had done it without asking, as though she already understood the space was hers. Now they moved through this house like 2 people who had memorized each other's schedules and arranged themselves not to overlap unnecessarily. Polite, present, separately. 8 weeks into the marriage, on a night when Zara had no commission to leave for and no reason to be anywhere except home, Kai cooked dinner. He was not a man who cooked. He had a personal chef 3 nights a week and ordered from 2 restaurants on the other nights, and had never once considered the kitchen a space that required him. But on this particular Tuesday, he sent the chef home early, looked up a recipe for jollof rice, her comfort food, the dish her mother made, the thing she had mentioned once 6 months ago in the context of missing home, and spent 2 hours in his own kitchen making something with his hands for the first time in recent memory. She came downstairs and stopped in the kitchen doorway. Something moved across her face, too fast for him to catch and hold, but he saw it. She sat down. He brought the food to the table. He had opened the wine she had mentioned once, briefly, in the way that people mention things they don't expect to be remembered. She noticed the wine. She said nothing about it. They talked. She told him about the Cape Town Commission, the logistical challenges of the site, the specific satisfaction of solving an acoustic problem in the main lodge that had taken her 3 iterations. He listened and asked questions, and it was, on the surface, a good dinner between 2 people who knew each other well. Then there was a pause, the kind that happens between 2 people when the surface has run out and something underneath is deciding whether to come up. And he said quietly, "Did I do something? Before I left that night, on the wedding night. Did I do something that I don't understand?" She looked at him. The pause that followed was the longest in their marriage so far. Then she said, "You left." Just that. He waited for more. She gave him nothing more. He said, "I know I did. I know. But I came back, Zara." She said, "I know you did." He said, Then why does it feel like... She said, "You left, Kai." Something in the way she said it, not angry, not accusatory, just absolutely certain, like a structural fact, closed the conversation in a way that he could feel, but could not locate. He cleared the table. She went upstairs. He stood at the kitchen window looking at the port lights on the water for a long time. Something happened, he thought, and something happened in that suite, and she has not told me, and I do not know if I am not asking the right question, or if there is no right question, or if the answer is somewhere in this city, and I need to go find it. He began quietly, and without telling her, to look. Now, if you are watching this right now, and you feel what Zara is carrying, subscribe to this channel right now, because we tell these stories for women who understand this kind of silence, this kind of weight. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because what is about to happen next will break something open in this story that changes everything. Stay. Right here. 3 months into the marriage, Sana stopped pretending. They were in the Onyx studio at 11 at night, the last 2 people in the building, or finishing a presentation for a new commission in Jeju. Sana closed her laptop and did not open another file, and Zara registered the shift because Zara registered everything. Sana said, "I'm not going to keep pretending that I don't see what I see." Zara did not look up from her screen. "I don't know what you're referring to." "Yes, you do." The studio was quiet, the kind of quiet that late-night creative spaces get when the day's performance is over and there's no one left to perform for. Sana said, "I've known you for 11 years. I've watched you grieve a lost commission and grieve your mother and grieve every version of yourself you outgrew. This is different. This is something else." She paused. "Something happened on your wedding night." Not a question. A statement. Delivered with the steadiness of a woman who had been carrying the weight of knowing for 3 months and had decided that carrying it alone was no longer an option she was willing to accept. Zara closed her laptop. She looked at the mood board on the studio wall, the Jeju Estate Commission, all those careful spatial decisions she had made to make someone else's life feel inhabitable and safe. She was quiet for so long that a lesser friend would have filled the silence. Sana did not fill it. She sat in it and waited with the patience of someone who understood that the truth in a person like Zara did not come because you pulled it. It came because you made the room safe enough and waited. Zara said, so quietly that Sana leaned forward slightly. "Something happened on my wedding night." Sana exhaled once. She put her hand over Zara's on the table. She did not ask what. She did not ask who or how or why. She said, "You need to talk to someone trained to hold this. Not me. Someone who knows how." She reached into her bag. She had been carrying the card for 6 weeks, waiting for this moment. "Her name is Dr. Imani Cole. She's been in Busan for 12 years. She's good, Zara. She knows how to hold heavy things." Zara looked at the card. Dr. Imani Cole. LCSW, a Hyundai address. She turned it over in her fingers. She put it in her jacket pocket. She did not say thank you, because between them, after 11 years, thank you was not necessary. Sana understood. Zara put the card on her bathroom vanity that night. She looked at it every morning for 11 days. Those 11 days were their own kind of work. When she would stand at the vanity in the morning before Kai was awake, in the specific quiet of a house where 2 people are living their separate versions of the same silence. And she would look at the card, and the card would look back at her, and she would think, "I am a woman who built a company. I am a woman who redesigned a lobby in a foreign city and won an international commission and flew to Dubai alone and made something beautiful in the desert. I am not a woman who cannot do this one hard thing." and then she would put the card down and go to the studio and manage another day. On the 12th day she called. Dr. Imani Cole's office was on the 14th floor of a building in Hyundai, with a floor-to-ceiling view of the sea that Zara, on her first visit, immediately assessed as deliberate. The open horizon, the quality of light, the sense that the room was designed to make a person feel that there was space enough for whatever they brought into it. She sat down across from a black woman in her late 40s who wore her locks in a low bun and had the specific quality of presence that made a room feel like it was paying attention. "Tell me why you're here," Dr. Cole said. Zara crossed her legs. She folded her hands in her lap. She said, "Something happened to a woman I know on her wedding night. She married a man who had to leave for work. While he was gone, someone came to the door of her hotel suite. She thought it was her husband. She opened the door." Dr. Cole listened to everything. She did not react in a way that rewarded Zara's management of the telling. At the end of the session, she said, "You've described everything that happened in the third person, as though it happened to someone you observed rather than someone you are. I'd like us to work on that." Zara said, "I'll think about it." Dr. Cole said, "Good. I'll see you Thursday." The second session, Zara arrived with the intention of doing better and did the same thing. Dr. Cole noted it without judgment. She shifted the conversation. She asked Zara what she loved about designing spaces. Zara talked, genuinely without managing it, about structure and intention, and the way a well-designed room could make a person feel safe without them ever understanding the mechanisms of that safety. Dr. Cole listened and then said, "That's what we're building here. Not a room. The thing inside you that makes one possible." Zara was quiet for a long time. The third session was the one that cost the most and gave the most back. Dr. Cole asked Zara to describe what happened on her wedding night, in the first person, present tense, as though it was happening now. Zara refused, calmly, completely. Dr. Cole did not withdraw the request. She did not push harder. She simply remained, present and patient, and absolutely certain that this was the work, that this was the thing, that the space she had built in this office on the 14th floor of a building in Hyundai, with the sea outside the window, could hold whatever Zara brought to it. She waited the way the sea waited, without urgency, without relenting. Zara refused a second time, softer. Dr. Cole waited. Then Zara spoke, in the first person, present tense. For 9 minutes she spoke, slowly at first, the way water moves before it finds the break in the rock, and then faster. More than she had planned, more than she had known was in her to say. Her voice did not shake. Her hands, folded in her lap, didn't move. But she spoke all of it. Every detail she had been carrying in the organized, managed, competent interior of herself for 4 months. She spoke it out into a room that was built to hold it, and it held. When she stopped, the office was completely quiet. Dr. Cole said, "How does it feel to have said it?" Zara thought about it honestly. She said, "Like I put something down that I didn't know I was still carrying." Dr. Cole said, "That's exactly what you did. Come back Thursday. There's more to put down." 5 months into the marriage, on a Wednesday afternoon, Kai's head of security, a man named Park, who had worked for the Sung Syndicate for 17 years, with the specific loyalty of someone who had seen everything and said only what was necessary, set a report on Kai's desk and stood back. "The Beck faction had operatives at the Grand Hyatt on the night of the wedding," Park said. "We've confirmed it through a source inside Bayek's network. The operatives were stationed on the 32nd floor." Kai looked at the report. He read the same line 3 times. Then he said, with a quiet that his team had learned to read as the most dangerous version of him, "Which room?" Park told him. The bridal suite was on the 32nd floor. The scene does not stay with what happened next. We stay with the window behind Kai, the port, the sea, Busan going about its business the way it always does. We see his hand on the desk. We see Park take one careful step backward. We understand, without being told, that something in the most controlled man in the room has just broken in a way that control cannot immediately reach. He did not go to Zara. He sent Park out, and he sat at his desk, and he did not move for a long time. Then he picked up the report again, and read it again, and put it down, and sat with what he now knew. 3 days passed. These 3 days were the most significant of Kai Sung's interior life. He moved through them in the exterior sense, meetings, calls, the machinery of his empire running the way it always ran. And inside those 3 days, he was somewhere else entirely. He was in their marriage. He was reading every moment of the last 5 months with new eyes, and the reading was devastating. And every trip that ran slightly longer than necessary, every time she came home and greeted him warmly and was already somewhere else, the dinner he cooked. You left, the way she had said it, the way it had closed the room around them. He understood all of it now. All of it. At once. 5 months of carefully managed distance and polite warmth, and the quiet, complete absence of the woman he had married. He understood it in a single moment, and the understanding was enormous, and it did not leave him room to breathe. He drove to Dr. Cole's building on the 3rd day. He sat in the parking garage for 40 minutes. He was not a man who sat in parking garages. He was not a man who did not know what to do. He sat there because this was the specific edge of his wife's healing, and he knew, with the precision that had always defined him, that this wasn't his to enter without invitation. He drove home. He sat across from Zara at dinner, and his eyes were different, and she noticed because she noticed everything. She said, "What happened?" He said, "I know." 2 words. She went completely still, in a way that was different from all her other stillnesses. This was not composure, not management, not the particular stillness of a woman who had decided to function. This was recognition. She said, carefully and precisely, "What exactly do you know?" He told her everything. Park's report, the Beck faction, the 32nd floor. He said it plainly, without softening it, without framing it for her comfort, because she wasn't a woman who needed her truth. Softened, and he knew that, and he owed her the unedited version. He watched her face while he told her, and her face did not change. She was not surprised, not because she had expected him to find out, but because she had been living inside this knowledge for 5 months, and surprise was no longer available to her in relation to any part of this story. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. The dinner table between them had the quality of a large distance. Then she said it, the sentence she had been carrying since 11:52 p.m. on their wedding night. "You promised it would never touch me." He said, "I know." She said, "You were wrong." He said, "Yes." He did not explain the port situation. He did not detail the operational necessity of that night, or the meeting that could not have waited, or the empire that had required him, and none of that was the point. And he understood it was not the point, and he did not ask her to make his failure smaller by accepting an explanation. He just sat in it. He sat in being wrong about the most important thing he had ever promised. She got up from the table. She went upstairs. He heard the bedroom door close, not slammed, just closed, with the finality of someone who had said everything and was now removing themselves from the room where it had been said. He did not follow. He sat at the dinner table alone and looked at the 2 plates, hers not quite finished, his untouched from the moment he had started talking. And he understood the full shape of what 8 months of not knowing had cost her. Every morning she had woken up in this house and carried it alone. So every professional trip to Tokyo and Dubai and Cape Town, those had not been ambition. He understood that now. Those had been survival. She had been putting distance between herself and the thing that had happened to her, and he had looked at all of it and called it adjustment, and respected her space when what she had needed, what he had not known to give because he had not known what had happened, was not space. He sat at that table for a very long time. Then he went to his study and picked up his phone and made the call. "I want it finished," he said. "All of it. Every part of the Beck network. I don't want a restructure, and I don't want a warning, and I don't want leverage. I want it finished." The voice on the other end said, "That will take time." Kai said, "Then start now." Here is what Zara did not know for the next 6 months. She did not know about the call Kai made the night of their confrontation. She did not know that Park had begun the systematic dismantling of the Bayek faction the following morning, working through channels that left no visible trace back to the Sung Syndicate. She did not know that Kai had spent 6 months of strategic capital, called in alliances he had been building for a decade, burned a legitimate business relationship with a Seoul investment group that had cost him considerably to ensure that what had happened to her in that hotel suite on the 32nd floor could never be repeated by that organization, to anyone, ever again. She did not know, and he had made the decision not to tell her while it was happening because of something he had understood in the parking garage outside Dr. Cole's building, that her healing could not wait on his response, that if she knew he was dismantling the Beck faction, she would spend her sessions with Dr. Cole aware of what he was doing out in the world, and her healing would become entangled with his action, and she deserved to heal for herself. Not because something was being done about it, not in exchange for anything, just for herself. She found out the way she found out most things, in pieces, assembled over time, until the full picture became visible. A headline on her phone screen over breakfast one morning: Bake Holdings, subsidiary under regulatory investigation. A call Kai took in his study, brief, monosyllabic, that ended with him saying simply, "Make sure." His lieutenant arriving one evening and leaving 4 minutes later, on a news item 3 weeks after that. Chairman Baek Do-sung steps down amid full restructuring. She put the pieces together on a Tuesday morning at her kitchen table with her coffee going cold and her phone face up in front of her. She sat with the assembled picture for a long time. Then she went to his study. He was at his desk. She stood in the doorway and she said, "You destroyed the Beck faction." He looked up. "Yes." "When did you start?" "The night of our conversation at dinner." 6 months ago." "Yes." She was quiet. "Then, why didn't you tell me?" He said, "Because I didn't want your healing to wait on my response. I didn't want you sitting in Dr. Cole's office thinking about what I was doing out here. You deserve to heal for yourself, not because something was being done, just for you." She looked at him for a long moment, and she said, that was the right decision. It cost her something to say it. She could feel the cost of it in her chest, the specific weight of giving a person credit when you are still in the process of forgiving them, when it would be easier to withhold. And she said it anyway, because it was true, and because she was a woman who did not let the difficulty of truth make her dishonest. She went back to the kitchen. She finished her coffee. She did not say anything else that morning, but something had moved. Something that had been absolutely still for 6 months had moved, just slightly, and she could feel it. The way you feel a building settle in the night. The specific, structural sound of weight redistributing itself. Stay right here. Do not go anywhere. Because what Imani Cole is about to say to Zara in their next session is the thing that changes the entire direction of this story. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, you are going to miss what comes next. Subscribe now. Turn on that notification bell. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And come back. Right now. Back to Zara. 8 months into the marriage, in a Thursday session that Dr. Cole would consider among the most important of her career, she asked Zara a question that was different from all the previous questions. "What are you most afraid of?" she said. "Not about Kai. Not about the marriage. About yourself." Zara had been working with Dr. Cole for 5 months now. She was not the same woman who had walked into this office and described her own experience in the third person as though it belonged to someone she had observed from a careful distance. She had learned, slowly, at real cost, with real reward, to inhabit her own experience, to say, "I" instead of "she," to stay present in the telling instead of managing it from a remove. She thought about the question for a long time. The sea outside the window was doing what it always did. Present. Wide. Without urgency. Then she said, "That I'll spend the rest of my life being afraid of something that is already over. That I'll build a wall so well that I forget it's a wall and start calling it a room. That I'll use my own competence as a hiding place and call it independence and never know the difference." Dr. Cole said, "Wait, what would it mean to let it be over?" Zara had no answer that day. She sat with the question for 2 weeks. She came back on a Thursday with an answer she hadn't rehearsed, because the real answer didn't need rehearsing. It had assembled itself in her while she was doing other things, the way the best structural solutions always came to her, not when she was forcing them, but when she had done enough work that the answer could arrive on its own. She said, "It would mean trusting that I survived it, not just that it happened and I kept going, that I actually survived it, that it didn't take anything permanent from me, that I am, still, the person who walked into that hotel room before the knock on the door." She paused. "The ivory silk and the champagne and the woman who had kept herself and was ready. That woman is still me. She didn't leave. She just went very quiet for a while." Dr. Cole said, "Did it take anything permanent?" Zara was quiet for a long time, long enough that the sea outside the window seemed to be waiting too. Then she said, "No." Dr. Cole said, "Say it again." Zara said, "No, it didn't take anything permanent from me." Dr. Cole said, "One more time. Like you mean it." Zara said, "It did not take anything permanent from me." This time she meant it all the way down. She could feel the difference in her own chest, the specific, structural feeling of a load-bearing wall that has been tested and held. She sat in that office with the sea outside the window and felt the wall become a door, and she understood that she had been building toward this moment for 8 months, and she had arrived. She went home that evening. It was a Thursday. So Kai was in his study at midnight, which was where he always was, running his empire, being the man the Sung Syndicate required him to be. She stood in the study doorway, and he looked up and saw something in her face that was different from anything he had seen in the last 8 months, and he set down what he was working on. She said, "I don't forgive you because you deserve it. I forgive you because I deserve to be free." He did not move. He did not speak. He looked at her with the full, specific attention of a man who understood that what was being given to him was not his to claim or perform a response to. It was hers to give, and his to receive with appropriate weight. She crossed the room. She sat beside him on the study couch, not touching, just beside each other, in the same space. So for the first time in 8 months, without the distance. They stayed like that for a long time. The city outside did what cities do at midnight. The study was very quiet. And something that had been broken for 8 months was not repaired. Repaired was not the right word. Repair implied returning to the original condition, and they were not going back to any original condition. But something that had been broken was beginning to become something new. Something that had the specific strength of things that have been tested. The weeks that followed were not dramatic. Real repair is not dramatic. It moves in the small, specific, ordinary moments that accumulate over time into something structural. And that is what happened between Zara and Kai in the months after the study couch. He was home for dinner 4 nights in a row and did not check his phone at the table. She noticed without saying so. She showed him the Jeju Estate Commission proposal over Saturday breakfast, spreading the schematics across the kitchen table. And he pulled his chair around to her side to look at them properly and asked about the north-facing rooms, and she answered him for 40 minutes. And at some point realized she was gesturing with her coffee cup and had been for the last 10 minutes, which meant she had stopped managing the conversation and started simply having it. He made her laugh one evening, genuinely, involuntarily. He said something about Sena that was both accurate and completely uncharitable, and it caught Zara entirely off guard, and she laughed before she had decided to, the kind of laugh that arrives from somewhere real. And she looked briefly startled by it, and then let it continue. He looked at her face when she laughed, and she could see what it meant to him, and she did not look away. He reached for her hand one evening on the balcony. They were watching the port lights on the water, both of them quiet, the city doing its night things below them. His hand found hers on the railing. She did not move her hand to her water glass. She did not move at all. She let him hold it. His hand was warm, and she could feel his pulse, and she let herself feel it. In Dr. Cole's office, the sessions shifted. The questions were different now. Not what happened, but what she wanted. What she was building toward. What a life that belonged fully to herself looked like, with a marriage in it, with Kai in it, and with all the complexity and history and hard-won understanding of who they both were, now that the easy version of them was no longer available. Zara had answers to these questions, real ones, not managed or performed, but genuinely hers, assembled over months of the most important interior work she had ever done. She told Dr. Cole in one of their final sessions, "I used to think that designing spaces for other people was the most important thing I did, making rooms that held people safely. Now I think," she paused, "the most important space I'll ever design is the one I've been building in here, in myself, cleared out and rebuilt and made sturdy enough to actually live in." Dr. Cole said, "How does it feel?" Zara said, "Like a room I'm not afraid to be in." She found out on a Wednesday morning before anyone else in the house was awake, though the bathroom was quiet, and the light was the particular gray of early Busan mornings, and she stood at the vanity, the same vanity where Dr. Cole's card had sat for 11 days. And she looked at what was in her hand, and she was very still. Not afraid, not overwhelmed. She was, and she would find the right word for this later, days later, when she had time to sit with it properly. Certain. The specific certainty of a woman who has done the interior work, who has cleared the ground and rebuilt the foundation and tested the walls and knows, finally, completely, that she can hold something, that she has the structure for it. She sat with the knowledge alone for 2 days. She went to Onyx. She had a meeting. She reviewed the Jeju proposal. When she came home and made dinner and sat across from Kai and looked at him over their food and thought about what she was carrying and what she was going to do with it and whether the foundation she had built was strong enough, and decided, finally, that it was. That they were. That this, all of it, the damage and the repair and the slow rebuilding and the hand on the railing at night, this was worth building toward. She told him the specific devastation of what he had gotten wrong and the specific gratitude of what she had given back, the particular quality of a man who is looking at the future and finding it possible in a way he had not been certain it would be. She said, "I'm keeping it," he said. "I know." And then he did the thing he had not done since the early weeks of their courtship, before the empire and the wedding night, and the silence, and the long road back. He reached across the desk and took both her hands in both of his and held them properly. Held them like they were something he understood the value of. And she let him, without hesitating, without managing the moment or deciding first if it was safe. She just let him hold her hands in the quiet of a study in Busan, with the sea somewhere beyond the window, and the city going on, being itself, and a future that had survived everything it had been put through, growing, quietly, in the space between them. Zara Mensah had spent her entire career designing spaces for other people, rooms where life could happen, walls that held, light that arrived at exactly the right angle to make a person feel that the world, at least in this particular space, was structured in their favor. She had built spaces for royalty and collectors and families who had more money than history, and families who had more history than money. And she had done all of it with the precision and intention of a woman who understood that a well-made space was one of the most generous things one person could make for another. She had never once, in all of that building, considered that the most important space she would ever design was the one inside herself. Cleared out slowly, painfully, with the help of a woman named Dr. Imani Cole, who understood that the first person is not a grammar lesson, but an act of survival. Rebuilt from the ground up across 8 months of the most demanding interior work she had ever done. Tested by grief, by anger, by the specific, ongoing difficulty of choosing to stay in the arena of love, even after it had cost her something she had not agreed to give. And filled, finally, filled with something that had survived, something permanent, something that was entirely hers to keep. Love had not fixed what happened. Love had not erased the corridor or the door or the knock at 11:52 p.m. or any of the 500 days that followed it. Love had done something harder and more real than that. Love had waited. It had waited at the edge of her healing without demanding entry. It had dismantled what had hurt her while she learned to unhurt herself. It had reached for her hand on the balcony and not pulled away when she let it stay. And she had let it stay. That was the thing. In the end, after everything, that was the thing. She had let it stay. If this story reached something in you, if you felt Zara's silence and understood it, because silence has been your language too, at some point, for some reason, if Kai's guilt and the specific devastation of being wrong about the most important thing moved you, if Dr. Imani Cole made you feel like someone in a room finally understood how to hold the heavy thing you've been carrying, then this channel was made for you, and not for the general audience. For you, specifically. Hit subscribe right now and turn on that notification bell, because every story we tell here is built for the woman who has done the interior work, who knows the difference between surviving and actually surviving, who refuses to settle for a love that does not see her completely. Like this video, because it matters more than you know. Share it with someone who needs it, your sister, your friend, the woman in your life who is carrying something she hasn't named yet. Leave a comment and tell me, did Zara make the right choice? Did Kai earn it? And where are you in your own story right now? Are you in the silence, or are you letting the hand stay? I want to know. I am here for every single answer. If you watch this all the way to the end, I see you. Zara, you are exactly who this channel exists for. The next story is coming, and it will find you right where you are. Stay close.